And coming off that win over Josh Allen and the Bills, there's a lot to discuss. Thankfully, we've got these guys, our own Luis Ortiz, and from the locker room, and SNL Texans Landry Locker, and the Texans beat writer for the Houston Chronicle, Jonathan Alexander, and we are joined virtually by former Texan and Sports Radio 610 Seth Payne. But before we get too deep into our thoughts, we've got to talk about how we feel. We're very emotional on this show, so Seth, lead us off. What is your emoji reaction to the Texans' Week 12 win over Buffalo?
Oh, yeah, I'm all deep in my emojis right now. Luis, you ready for this one? Sad.
I'm ready, Seth. Shoot.
It's a sad face. I'm going to throw a little twist, and this is the reason why. We're more than halfway through this season, and the Texans defense has established itself as one that could be generationally memorable, and we have no nickname for it. We can't do House of Pain. That's been done already. Legion of Doom is too much of a ripoff of Legion of Boom. Sack Exchange wouldn't be geographically correct. We need to come up with something before the Texans possibly hit the playoffs. But other than that, I'm just so excited to watch this defense every single week. If the offense can keep making incremental changes and improvements, then we're really onto something here.
Leave it to Seth to always throw a curveball, right? Sad after a win like that. I'm going to go with this one right here. I was actually surprised, shocked at how the Texans were able to dominate this Bills offense, one of the best offenses in the league, if not the best one. And how about the way they just shut down Josh Allen? Now, for me, I feel like, okay, now the Texans defense has showed us once and once again that they can do this. They did it to J.K. Dobbins against the Denver Broncos. They did it against Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers. They can shut down their best player, but I'm still waiting for the offense to show up, guys. They got to do it consistently.
Yeah, I'm going with a similar theme here, but I'm going with a different emoji. This one right here. And because now it's got me thinking, can the defense carry the Texans as a team this year, even if the offense struggles? We've seen a lot of really bad play from them early in the season, and it led to a lot of their losses. But I'm starting to think that this defense is really good enough to take them deep into the playoffs, even if the offense has its struggles down the line. But I don't think that'll happen. I think they're getting a lot better.
I'm gonna go with right below Jonathan. I'm right here. I'm staying the same because I feel like I've been watching this same team for 2 years. The defense shuts down Josh Allen. They're in good position right now, but the offense, 60 yards, less than 70 yards in the second half is not going to get it done. So I feel like my emotions are the exact same. I feel like it's deja vu. They're going to have to crank it up a notch, and we'll see what happens when C.J. Stroud gets back if this offense can get going.
All right, Landry, I am feeling the same way that you're feeling because it seems like not just the last 2 years, but even this year, after a win or a loss, we're talking about all the same things, this great defense and the offense struggling to get going. So I don't know if this defense is good enough to take them deep into the playoffs, but now that we know how these guys are feeling, let's hear how the Texans are feeling.
Every game we play is a massive game, but tonight, it was a big win. Thursday night football, a win we needed, and the team we played together. So it was a big win for us.
It feels good, Just we keep stacking each day, each week. We try and go out there and be the best team every time we step on the field. So we guys just keep improving each week.
Obviously, when you have a Thursday night game against top offense like that and you're able to do what we did just as a team and come out with a win, it's special.
All right, so guys, after an 0-3 start, this team somehow, some way has gotten to 6-5. I don't know how it happened, but let's start with this. What does this Week 12 win say about the Texans as a team? Seth, you lead us off.
I think, and we'll probably touch on this 18 more times as we have already, this is a championship caliber defense, and I think it reaffirmed that. We know that this defense is good enough to win a Super Bowl, do whatever you want to do, but it needs to do what they did the other night, which is create turnover after turnover after turnover to help out the offense. When Davis Mills is the quarterback, we really don't know what to expect when C.J. Stroud comes back. It looked like things were starting to click before he got injured. If he can continue on that same trajectory, that's where something really special can happen. But we're sitting here after 3 wins with your backup quarterback. But because of the malaise we had about the offense before that, I think none of us, or at least a lot of us, or amongst the fan base or what have you, we don't really want to. We don't want to think that it's just a given that when C.J. Stroud comes back, it's going to be that much better.
Yeah, we know they have a superpower. Their superpower is their defense. The offense leaves a lot to be desired. Quite frankly, they're going to have to be better if this team wants to get any better than they were last year, because let's be honest, they went 10-7, they won a playoff game, and they still made a change at OC. And you can make a case that Nick Caley's been worse than Bobby Slowick was last year. So we know they have a superpower, but the offense is going to have to be better if they want to reach the ceiling and the goals that they set out when they made the changes they did last offseason.
What does it say, Jonathan? What do you think?
Yeah, I'll always be skeptical of the offense. I think they're getting a lot better, though. The offensive line is starting to block a lot better. They are giving the quarterbacks a lot more time. Davis Mills had a lot of time in the pocket. Even before C.J. Stroud had that concussion, he was not touched against the San Francisco 49ers. So I think their passing game is getting a lot better. However, I think they're a one-dimensional team. I haven't seen consistency from the running game. Woody Marks has been good in spurts, but they have not been good consistently, and I think that concerns me down the line. But the defense is elite, absolutely.
Yeah, it does seem like they've found a little something in the passing game the last couple weeks, and especially in the red zone. Some more shorter passing plays, like thank goodness they're not just trying to run the ball up the middle 4 times in a row anymore. But, I don't know what it says about this team because, again, going back to this point, we continue to ask the same questions. They somehow come out with a win, but it doesn't seem like things are quite right with this team. Luis, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it says that this team goes as the defense goes. And, but also it says that this team can win with an offense that's just good enough. It doesn't have to be explosive. It doesn't have to be the best one in the NFL. It just has to be good enough and consistent enough, right? Look, I think also we got to give them a little bit of credit. They are improving. You talk about the offensive line. You can see that they've made changes. They brought in that jumbo package, right? The offense at certain points, at certain moments, you do see some nice plays, especially in the passing game. So I think that they're, after starting 0-3 to win 6 out of the last 8, I know that they won twice against Tennessee, right? But they do have legit wins against this Bills team and also the 49ers. I think those two are 2 legit wins. The Broncos game could have been a win as well. So if things are starting to click maybe with, what is it they have, 6 games left? I think they can make improvements and maybe show us something more than we expected from them this season.
And they have won 6 out of their last 8 games, and they've won their last 3 with their backup, Davis Mills, under center. I feel like this is a question we have to address. I don't want to ask it, but I feel like we just have to talk about it. Is there now more pressure on C.J. Stroud given what D. Millie has done, Seth?
Look, I think there's less pressure on C.J. Stroud because there's literally less pressure on the quarterback as the offensive line has improved. One of the improvements they made is the pass protection has steadily gotten more and more consistent. The newest configuration of the offensive line might actually be just what the doctor ordered, but they had a 16% pressure rate in the game on Thursday night. That's the lowest it's been since week 5 of 2023, according to NFL stats. And I think that's something that Davis Mills has benefited from. We know that C.J. Stroud has had to deal with really porous pass protection at times over the last couple of years. Hopefully they can keep that up for C.J. over the remainder of the season.
I think there's absolutely more pressure on C.J. Stroud. I think that he's Davis Mills basically gave him back the team in better position than it was when he left it. And I know we can talk about how C.J. Stroud's clearly better than Davis Mills. I don't think anyone's going to go far enough to say that, but there's a lot of pressure. Now, it's similar to what it was heading into the season, but compared to what we thought about this team when C.J. got hurt and what we think now, where maybe it's because they played on Thursday, but the national media is saying a lot of good things about them. So I think there's more pressure, but I mean it's nothing new for CJ. It's just kind of where they're at.
I agree with Landry. I think there's definitely pressure. Having said that, what we've seen from CJ since 2023 is that he's handled pressure very well. He doesn't let things get to him, and I think that there's a blueprint for winning for the Texans. All you have to do is not turn the ball over. And I think CJ is obviously a better quarterback than Davis Mills. I think as long as the offensive line protects him, he'll be fine. But there is pressure because I'm sure he does hear some of the comments from the loud minority that they want Davis Mills to stay out there. But make no mistake, CJ Stroud is not going to be benched. He'll be out there.
Yeah, and
It'll be a cold day in hell before that happens.
I don't think we don't think that that's happening. That is for sure. We don't think C.J. Stroud's getting benched, but I do think there's more pressure just in terms of the perception, right, around what Davis Mills has done. And like you said, Jonathan, I think certainly that CJ is bound to hear some of this talk, some of this chatter, regarding what people are saying of Davis Mills should start, even if that's not a good idea at all, but over CJ. But, I do think that there is some sort of pressure just in terms of the perception, the outside. Do you think that, Luis?
For sure. I definitely think there's more pressure on CJ now. And if there's not only just more pressure, there should also be more of a spark within CJ underneath him, right? He should want to come back and play even at a better level, at a higher level, because once you see what they were able to do without him, also, let's just say play devil's advocate, right? And let's just say things go wrong, and then they go on a 3-game losing streak. You don't think that the guys in the locker room start looking at each other and start maybe saying things like, well, we were winning without you. It's the same offensive line. It's the same offensive system, the same offensive coordinator. If the backup can do it, then the starting quarterback should be able to do it, if not better, right? That's the whole reason why you're the starting quarterback. That's the whole reason why we talk about him being a better QB than Davis Mills. So for me, there's definitely a lot more pressure on CJ to come back. And maybe it's not as simple as plug and play, but it's what it is. It is what it is.
All right, and we will have to see how things go this week with C.J. Stroud back at practice for the Texans and what happens on Sunday. We've got more coming up. And we are back talking Texans. Here's something crazy, right? At 6-5, the Texans have the same record as the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Steelers. So my question, are the Texans now in the same conversation as these teams, Seth?
Oh, yeah, I think they're 100% in this conversation. I mean, and right there in the standings and the wild cards, or just we'll talk about the Colts a little bit later. The biggest mystery for me is the Baltimore Ravens, because the last time we saw the Baltimore Ravens, we saw just how ridiculously bad their defense was and had been. But now for the 4th time in the last 5 seasons, the Ravens has been one of the worst defenses at the beginning of the season. And then in the second half of the season, they play like they're one of the best, which I'm thinking about doing my doctoral thesis on the Ravens defense and how they can just as soon as I finish my undergraduate. But they've since the Texans faced the Ravens, they haven't allowed more than 19 points in a game. Lamar Jackson hasn't been scoring points in droves the way we know he can. That defense has really come around. And if the Texans face them again, they're going to have that same old question of all right, Lamar Jackson on Christmas Day versus the Texans. Are we going to see that version of him? Or can we see what the Texans did this last week versus a mobile quarterback?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Ravens will be a dangerous team. Having said that, I don't think when it comes to getting into the playoffs, the Texans are going to have to worry about that. They got to worry about the Jaguars losing. I think the Ravens will end up winning the AFC North, and I would never have faith in the Steelers, given how they've finished down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think this is a wide open AFC. I don't think there's any dominant team in the conference. Even the Broncos. We saw the Broncos beat the Texans by 3 points with Davis Mills coming in. So, imagine if CJ Stroud had finished that entire game. He had started out a little bit hot there. So I think it's a wide open conference. But the Texans need some help from some other teams. And they have to beat the Chiefs and the Colts these next 2 weeks, in my opinion, if they want to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I'm not going to put them in the same category as the Chiefs, because I think the Chiefs are a more complimentary team. And we saw that. I actually think the Texans caught a bad break with the Chiefs winning today, because I would love to push them in the rear view a little bit and then not have to worry about the division race with the Colts. And then week 18, the Colts might not even have anything to play for. So the Chiefs, with how complimentary they've been, defense and their offense being able to make plays, I'm not putting them in that category. Baltimore's tough because Seth brought up their defense. It's up and down, but let's be honest, they were missing a lot of pieces when they faced the Texans, and they do kind of own the Texans when they have Lamar Jackson in a team. So they're definitely in the mix with them, but I can't put the Texans and Chiefs in the same category at this point.
Yeah, I think to Jonathan's point, there is no juggernaut this year, seemingly, in the AFC. There's a lot more room than there has been in other years, but it's hard for me to put the Texans on the same, on the same level as these teams, just because when we watch the games, the Texans are so one-sided with defense and offense that it's hard to see them playing, to your point, Landry, more complementary football. Luis?
Man, I have to say that if there is a juggernaut in the AFC, to me, I think it's the Broncos, because they do have the best record. And even when, again, going back to that Texans team, which they limited very well J.K. Dobbins, they ended up figuring out a way how to win, right? We're talking about Bo Nix figuring out a way how to win down the stretch. Today, the Colts, listen, the Chiefs, the only way they were getting on the scoreboard was by field goals until they scored in the fourth quarter. Their first touchdown came in the fourth quarter. So if you were, and again, Jonathan Taylor was limited to, I think, 55 yards. So I'm bringing that up to compare that Denver was able to figure out a way how to do it. For me, now to answer the question, I don't put the Texans in the same conversation as the mentioned teams. The reason why, because I think that X factor. I think I have more faith in the Ravens and Lamar Jackson figuring out a way how to win. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs figuring out a way how to win because they've been there. They know how to win. They've made deep playoff runs. And the Texans, as good as that defense is, I don't have enough faith in the offense and them figuring out a way how to win.
Well, let's talk about Indianapolis. The division-leading Colts come into focus. The Texans defense, they've managed to shut down some big weapons, right? Christian McCaffrey, Josh Allen, J.K. Dobbins. Can they do the same thing this coming week with Jonathan Taylor, who himself is coming off a bad performance against the Chiefs? Seth?
Well, when the Texans have faced some of the top running backs on their schedule, they've done a good job of bottling those guys up, holding them to far less than their season averages. Look, James Cook had 100-plus yards rushing. The long touchdown run, honestly, I hate to whine about officials, but the Texans physically destroyed the who did they play?
Bills.
Why am I doing this? Thank you. James Cook. James Cook's long touchdown run. The Texans actually physically destroyed the Bills on that play, but the officials missed two egregious holding calls, and if not for that play, they would have done a phenomenal job shutting down James Cook. I think that versus Jonathan Taylor, and James Taylor, James Taylor wouldn't run for more than 3 or 4 yards against the Texans. But Jonathan Taylor, in the past, I would worry about the Texans selling out to stop the run and then getting eviscerated by the play action. The Texans actually this year are one of the very best teams in the league against play action. So I think they'll be very much focused on Jonathan Taylor, and they'll do a good job of it. I'm worried about the Colts receiving threats. They've got weapons on the outside that the Texans haven't really seen in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Texans' game plan defensively is definitely going to be stopping Jonathan Taylor. I mean, he makes the engine go. He's been a beast. I would argue the AFC's offensive player of the year, and the Texans know that if they allow him to get off, then this is a Colts victory. So I think they're going to be focused on that. I think they can, but Jonathan Taylor has a history with the Texans. I think 188 yards in that Week 18 game. Had they kept him in the game, we might be having a different conversation about the Texans even right now. But I think the Texans have struggled at times. Like early in the season, they allowed some running backs to get loose and cooked as well. So we'll see what happens. I think that's the key for this game.
I think they can set out to stop Jonathan Taylor, and they can do it. What worries me about Indianapolis is their weapons. I think they have underrated receivers. I think they have the best tight end in the league right now in Tyler Warren. And I think the Texans, for how good this defense is, we even saw it against the Bills. Like there's some times where in the middle and in that intermediate passing that they are kind of vulnerable. And that's my concern is if you're going to commit to stopping Jonathan Taylor, I think Indianapolis possesses weapons that could – I don't want to use the word expose about the best defense in the league, but they can take advantages of the weaknesses that the Texans have on defense.
Yeah, and if the Texans have had one weakness on defense this year, it's been that explosive play. It really hit them hard. Early in the season, it seemed like they limited it a little more in kind of that second part, I guess the second part of the first half. But now we saw even in this last game against Buffalo a number of explosive plays. So for me, that's really what it's more about, limiting the explosive plays, whether it's the run or the pass.
I mean, if we go off base the statistics, the Texans have one of the best defenses against the rush and against the passing game as well, right? So Can they stop Jonathan Taylor? I mean, I've already mentioned, right? They did stop Christian McCaffrey, J.K. Dobbins. I think they have the ingredients to be able to do it. He's going to be coming off a poor performance, so I think he's going to want to get some payback and really have a good game. You see it all the time, and with elite players in the NFL, they got to bounce back that next game, right? But I go with you, right? I agree with you. I think that also they might have some tape to look at after this game against the Kansas City Chiefs and see, okay, what did they do that was effective and efficient to be able to stop him? But if that's their game plan, and you hear it all the time in the NFL, coaches talking about, look, the run game is what establishes everything, that's what gets everything going, then that could be a double-edged sword where you focus too much on the run game and then you get beat, over the top.
All right, still much more Texans to talk. These guys aren't going anywhere. And we are back. Luis Ortiz, Landry Locker, Jonathan Alexander, and Seth Payne. All right, guys, I don't have to tell you how bad this Texans offense has looked for the majority of the season. So here's the question. With their remaining 6 regular season games, what can this team do to improve their offense or at least make it a little bit better? Seth?
They need to figure out how to run down in the red zone and on the goal line, as well as they've started to run in the middle of the field. If the field were only 60 yards long, if it was only between the 20s, they might be the best rushing offense in football. But when it really, really matters and they get down and they have to punch it in, it's not just the offensive line. And the offensive line has made improvements. The running backs aren't necessarily always seeing things as well as maybe a Joe Mixon would, and they're leaving some yardage and some opportunities on the table. So that's a big part of it. And then simply C.J. Stroud can be a part of all that as well. The offense scoring, if they could score, I don't know, every now and then 30 points or more with a little bit more regularity, hopefully C.J. can be just the magical elixir for that.
Jonathan?
Like I mentioned earlier, I think they've got to be more consistent running the football. Like Seth mentioned, they've been far too inconsistent with both Woody Marks and Nick Chubb. And then I think the other thing is when C.J. Stroud comes back, I think they have to take care of the football. They can't give the opposing team more possessions and tire the defense. So those are my 2 biggest things.
I would say bring back Bobby Slowick. No, I'm just kidding. But honestly, Nick Caley's been worse than Bobby Slowick. Let's just be honest. But the way that they get better is I think the one thing that C.J. Stroud can take from Davis Mills is feed Jaden Higgins. And I actually go back to week 1 where C.J. trusted Jaden Higgins to go up and make a play and the ball got intercepted. I think since that moment, their chemistry was kind of off. It felt like he was aiming passes to Jaden Higgins instead of giving him the chance to go up and get it. So I think of all the things that could benefit CJ, keep that chemistry with Nico that you've always had. Trust Jaden Higgins a little bit more. And he also actually has really good chemistry with Jalen Noel. It's the best deep balls he's thrown this year have been to Jalen Noel. So I think just continuing to feed the beast receivers, I think that's the way that they get better. But at this point, it also might just be CJ making plays despite Nick Caley, kind of like he had to do with Bobby Slowick.
Yeah, and for me, it's converting in the red zone, like Seth was saying. I know there are a lot of things that lead up to that, but their statistics are so bad in the red zone. Their efficiency in scoring a touchdown when in the red zone, they're like second worst in the NFL. I don't think you can sustainably win games like that. It's good that they have chances, but if you're not converting, then it's not really mattering, right?
And I think that goes hand in hand with what I'm thinking. It's they have to be more aggressive. Stop being so conservative and just go out there and play. And, leave it out on the field. And if you end up losing, you end up losing, but you hang your hat on it and at least you tried. I think that sometimes you have to be, they play too much of a conservative way. And that's as a team, and also CJ. For me, I think he has to come back after missing the last 3 games and really just come out here and take his talents to another level. Step up a notch.
All right. Well, we are going to go here with our final question. Okay. Does a win against the Colts mean the division is still in reach, Seth?
Oh, yeah, I think 100%. Just simply mathematically, they'd be 1 game back from the Colts with another chance to play the Colts. So whichever inaccurate cliche you want to use about controlling your own destiny or what have you, they can do it simply by winning 2 games versus the Colts, which is achievable. I think the Colts are impressive offensively, but we've seen Daniel Jones look a lot like the worst version of Daniel Jones at times over the past few weeks, and I'm not sold on the Colts defense being as good as they look statistically. So those are achievable, and then after that, it's just if you can beat the Colts twice, then it's what each team does with the remainder of their schedule.
Yeah, I thought that the loss to the Chiefs made this possible. The Texans definitely have a chance. Will they? I'm not convinced that that'll happen, but they definitely have a chance because if they beat the Colts this week, they're one game behind. And let's say it's still one game by week 18. By that time, it's anybody's game.
Yeah, I absolutely think that the division's alive if they're able to win this game. I think they open as a 4.5 point underdog. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be an interesting battle. We're going to talk a lot about Shane Steichen and D'Amico Ryans. This is really a Nick Caley game. Like you got to have your best game. You can make a case he had his worst game if you look at the second half of the last one. So I keep saying it's got to be a Nick Caley game. You can't ask your defense to carry this much of a load. And I hate to be, talk about a great win like Buffalo, but I'm always the guy, like if we had a group project and we got an A and two people didn't contribute, I was mad at the two people. I don't care if we got an A or not. So Nick Caley and Frank Ross, honestly, I like Frank Ross, but the special teams and the offense, they gotta add bigger complements to complementary football. But absolutely, the division's alive if they win this game.
And I think that you have to be able to analyze what happened, good and bad, whether they win or lose. Just because you win, it doesn't automatically make everything better. There were a lot of issues on offense, to your point, in this previous game against Buffalo, issues that have continued to happen throughout the course of this season and even going back before Nick Caley. This week for me is really a prove it kind of week for them, because when we go back to like their game against the Seahawks, for instance, we knew going into that game, hey, we're going to get an accurate description of what this team is made of. If they are, in fact, a good team, if they have, in fact, made improvements, we're going to see that this week, I think, against Indianapolis.
Yeah, this game is the next measuring stick for the Texans, right? Because it just became a lot bigger than what, if we looked at it at the beginning of the season, nobody really had this game circled on your calendar. Right now, they lose to the Chiefs, and it makes the division reachable. Now, you come off of winning against the Buffalo Bills. I think for me, they're taking steps, right? Again, we go back, they beat the 49ers. Now they beat the Bills. 2 legit wins for me. Now you get the Colts, who are leading the division and one of the best teams in the AFC. If you do get this win, the division is right there.
All right. Well,
go ahead.
Jonathan, tell us.
If I could rebut something you all are saying, about the offense having some of the same struggles, I disagree slightly.
Okay.
Like I thought that the struggles early in the season were a lot of the penalties, and I thought that led to the inconsistency. I don't think you've seen that as much. And I think you can contribute probably the second half to, number one, they were a little bit conservative. And number two, you have Davis Mills. And nothing against Davis Mills. He did a phenomenal job. But he's not to the level of what C.J. Stroud could possibly bring you. So I think that the issues are a little bit different. I think they've improved significantly, to Luis's point, offensively. Now, are they an elite offensive team? No. But they've been manageable so far. And the way this defense is playing, I think that's good enough right now to beat a not dominant AFC.
I'll add on to that too, Jonathan. Like, to disagree with Landry a bit, and this is going to be a depressing defense of Nick Caley. But look, like Nick Caley, right now the offense is 21st in scoring on offense. Last year, the Texans finished 19th in scoring. So, I don't know that definitively Nick Caley is worse than Bobby Slowick was necessarily, and he's had to do three of those performances were with a backup quarterback. The areas where I have seen improvement is, I think, the consistency of the run game. They're not getting tackled for a loss nearly as often. Their success rate is higher, and then the pass protection, I think, is definitively improving as a group of 5. And it's shown improvement over time. Part of that's because they've gotten the ball out quicker. So I'm not sitting here saying that Nick Caley is an awesome offensive coordinator. I just think it's too early to say that he's definitively worse than Bobby Slowick was.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll see what he can do. My whole thing is, right now we're talking about the Texans, and we're saying, okay, can they win the division? Can they win 10 games? And then can the defense carry the offense? When you make the change that you made with Bobby Slowick, it's a proactive change that you probably could have defended if they would have given him one more year. And the fact that we're even talking about him in the same stratosphere for me is a little bit disappointing. Good news for him is every goal that they've set out to have is still in front of them, but he definitely has to be definitively better than Bobby Slowick. Not just definitively worse. Like, he has to be better than Bobby Slowick to justify the changes that they made. And C.J. Stroud has to look good. That was the most important thing this year. More than anything else, C.J. Stroud has to look good. And this system has to look like a system that can not maximize Davis Mills' skill set, but can maximize C.J. Stroud's skill set. It's important. It's not a matter of C.J. Stroud being better than Davis Mills. It's this skill set maximizing what C.J. Stroud can be, like it kind of did with Davis Mills, although the ceiling's not as high with him as it is with C.J.
All right, well, improbably enough, this Week 13 Sunday matchup has become even bigger. We thank you guys. Landry Locker from the Locker Room and SNL Texans, the Chronicles' Jonathan Alexander, and former Texan and Sports Radio 610 Seth Payne. Next week, well, see what Week 13 holds.